make your comment again, please?
The secondary containment will be based on the largest container within the secondary containment. If all of the containers break at the same time because of an earthquake where the hard plumbing breaks, we're going to get a possible release from all of the tanks, which is going to be greater than the total volume of the secondary containment, what it's able to hold.
That's a distinct possibility. Yeah.
Is that something that should have been looked at by the engineer?
Actually, I think I'm just going to take a shot at this, that when they developed the regulations, that both for, where is it found in the fire code too, Steve?
Yeah.
It's just,
it's a single container. So they just don't assume a complete failure of all tanks.
yeah, that's just what they go with.
Catastrophic. It still can happen, but they don't make you design for that.
Yeah. Did you have another comment? Yeah. That's for CalARP.
It's under the CalARP, the old RMPP seismic guidance document. Now, of course, the old RMPP program is called the CalARP, California Accident Release Program, Prevention Program. It is being used throughout the state.
Okay.
We have it on the LA County Fire Department Hazardous website, one of the guidance documents. And whoever wanted to look at our website.
Can I ask a question? Are you applying the CalARP requirements to PE assessments for hazardous waste tank systems?
A CalARP facility.
A lot of the refineries where they have pipe runs, a lot of huge tanks.
Right. No, that's a good approach. The CalARP approach is good, and they look at worst case scenarios, but we're just sticking within the Chapter 10, Article 15 tank, hazardous waste tank system standard.
This tank, the guidance document applies to any type of tank, any type of piping, any type of pipe runs.
If it's a CalARP chemical, subject to CalARP or RMP.
Whether it's hazmat or has waste, but it doesn't care. It looks at seismic effects on tanks and piping.
Right. We just don't have any authority to do that under this program.
So we use that guidance document.
Yeah, that's a good document. Thanks.
You know, one more thing as far as secondary containment, if you're going to be inside, fire code also requires the 20-minute sprinkler flow law.
Oh.
That's true.
So then you're going to have additional protection.
If it's inside, right. Same facility. This is kind of cool. How often do you see labeled piping? I mean, this place is awesome. You really can't say, that's electrical there. But these, Leon had a photo earlier, the piping was labeled on one of yours. Yeah. It really helps you as an inspector, because these are spaghetti works, right? What the piping is, so it's neat that they do that. More anchoring, really good labeling. He's got his tanks labeled really good here. It's all blacked out to protect the innocent. Same facility. This stuff, waste going underground. If you can see that, but there's actually going in there. It's a double contained. And he's got monitoring down in there. It's really not the best photo, but that was the only one in my photo library that I could find. Again, showing great anchoring. Mop buckets, pretty dry in here, right? But he's prepared to clean up any water of concern. This is a board shop, printed circuit boards. Big place. And their production, which is amazing, still around, not overseas. This is one earlier. We had the question, Marjorie, I think you were asking about the container. I do see some liquid on here, actually, a little bit. But I'm just showing this because I'm really happy with this site. He's got the cubic yard right underneath. They've engineered this to be high, so it just drops right in, so to reduce the human element as much as possible, because we are messy at times. They even have workers to reduce workplace injury. They step up on this thing if they have to do so. But there's no spillage. How do they know we were coming? Our inspections are unannounced, right? We knock on the door, and no time's a good time, but this place is prepared. They've just part of what they do. They're able to have the resources and have people that are assigned for hazardous waste management, and this is what they do. They wear one hat, and that's really beneficial. To me, it saves them money in the long run. Same facility. A couple years ago, they decided to install a recycling unit in part of their process to reduce the amount of water they had to buy from the city. And this was, I forget how many millions of dollars, but it was put in, I think, 3 years ago. And in 3 more years, they will have recouped their investment. Is a wastewater recycling unit, is this subject to take standards? Yes. Who says yes? Raise your hand. Yep. Absolutely. Marjorie raises her hand. Anyone think, not sure? Doesn't matter. She has to have an NPDS permit. Not yet. Yes. So you see the anchoring. There it is. This is not a TP unit. It's a recycling unit, 25143.2C, so they get the exemption from having to have a permit, but it's still subject to Article 10 because it's still receiving hazardous stuff. So you need to check freeboard. You need to check anchoring. These are the ion exchange portions. Anchoring, look at that. That's it. Any questions?
So,
good to go.
I apologize for not doing a break-in here, but don't want to send you out to lunch at 12 or 12:05. If you got to get up and go get a drink, don't worry about it. Go ahead and do it. Terry just covered. It's real nice. He just sped us along real fast because he was just talking about the same situation I have, and I'm coming across more and more now. They're claiming excluded recyclable material, and then how do we fit it into our regulatory scheme? So here's one I came up to, and you look at it, and you're like, I'm in an electroplating operation. They claim it treats wastewater with chrome 6. You see it labeled as ERM on one side and hazardous waste on the other side. They don't have a tiered permit. So you're like, okay, what's going on here? What questions do you ask? So we're going to assume the point of generation's identified, the waste is hazardous, it's been characterized, you can tell it's a tank system, it's not just a bunch of containers, and you know the waste is treated, but it's recycled, so where does that fit in here? So we're going to power through real quick, but this is just some of the questions I asked when I was out there. Why is it labeled ERM anti-hazardous waste? Of course. One inspector told me one thing, one inspector told me the other thing, and you know, we do our best. We don't always get it right. Sometimes we get them to give us a different answer the next time we come out, or they change their process. So maybe both inspectors were right. What goes into the unit? These are all the questions you've got to ask to figure out how they fit in to the scheme here and what regulatory requirements they have to meet. Where did it come from? So electroplating, F listing. All right, well, is it recycled? Well, yeah, the water goes back into the process, but we have to pull out this metal sludge periodically. Okay, why is the sludge hazardous? Oh, I have metals over the TTLC. All right. So that being said, where are you recycling that stuff? Oh, we do a countercurrent rinse. The water goes back in. So it's returned to the original process. Yes. Is it only tanks and is it closed? Yes. How long does waste accumulate there? Well, it's a flow through, but usually less than 24 hours, except when we're not working. Is a treatment permit required? Well, I don't think so. What's a treatment permit? Okay, well, do you have a PE assessment? Yes. And that's kind of what Terry just said, and here is why. if they are claiming excluded recycled material provisions and they are doing on-site treatment and they don't have a tiered permit, that might be allowable. It is under this section C, provided it's used at the same facility it's generated, recycled within 90 days of generation, managed in accordance with all applicable requirements for generators of hazardous waste, and they're keeping the records and they're not kicked out of the exemption because of being applied to the land or some other weird situation. Yes?
Well, I'm kind of confused here. Because you have sludge involvement too, right?
You have what?
Sludge involvement too, which is a hazardous waste.
Correct.
Would that be in the bottom of the tank?
The sludge, when it's removed from the treatment unit, it does get managed as hazardous waste in a separate accumulation unit.
Is it in the tank that they're declaring as ERN?
Yeah, it'll be building up within there until they take it out.
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking, okay, maybe I'm missing a point here. But I'm just thinking, if it contains, what's the hazardous waste that's going to be carted off to dispose of the hazardous waste,
Uh-huh.
why would the excluded recycled material, the water might be recycled, but there's still sludge and stuff?
Great question. And I think hopefully this will help clarify in a minute here. I was going to go to the DTSC website and bring up the whole document, but I found this on the hazardous waste and recycling letters. This section allows you to do treatment. So you can do treatment of a hazardous waste not subject to the tiered permitting requirements. So that's what that section C does. It pulls you out of treatment permitting. But the conditions are such that you have to meet all hazardous waste generator requirements. That means if it requires labeling, you must label it. If it's going to require PE assessments, you're going to have to do PE assessments. If it requires daily inspections for tanks, you're going to have to do that. So here is the section. And it says, recycled material may be recycled, facility not authorized, including tier permitting, provided what I just said, recycled and used on site, generator time limits, managed in accordance with all applicable requirements. There are record-keeping requirements also for those. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, kind of. I'm just going to, because earlier I brought this example of a distribution unit for solvents, and you said that, if I understood you correctly, that unit would be a hazardous waste tank or container.
Possibly, yes.
And that really surprised me, because I thought hazardous waste wouldn't be involved until you remove the sludge and containerize it in a drum.
Well, if hazardous waste goes into a unit, then it's going to be subject. If hazardous material comes into a unit, then it would not be. And something can be a waste if it's recycled, but this is the same section that gets out of the treatment permit requirements for doing on-site recycling of solvents also.
What I'm saying is that not all the waste will be recycled, but part of it is actually being disposed of.
There is going to end up some, right, and DTSC's kind of policy has always been a significant amount, and some people would say 50%. Some more, it's not, yeah, it's pretty subjective, but if you can show you're recycling a significant amount, then you can get the reduced standards. Yeah, the giggle test. I haven't started using that in the field yet, but it makes sense to me. Again, something to keep in mind, there are other exclusions in addition to the ERM provision. So if they have a facility process and it's entirely connected, reclaimed and returned to the process, all these types of materials are defined as secondary materials. And the reason I brought that up is because there are exclusions for secondary materials. So if they could meet this, it is excluded. It is not a waste. The problem is that in your normal situation, they're not going to be entirely a closed system connected with pipes or other comparable means. I think this could get them out of all the waste requirements. However, I have seen DTSC responses back on the hazardous waste and recycling letters that still references 25143C. So I think the C allows the treatment, but there's a possible way out. I've never had anyone claim this yet for anything I've dealt with, so cross that bridge when I get there. So again, PE assessment tier permit. So in the case, they did not claim it's excluded from classification as a waste under that 261.4. They said, well, we're operating here, we're treating, so tier permit not required, but that section does require full compliance. So that's why they had a PE assessment. That's why they had it labeled hazardous waste and excluded recyclable material. Do they have to label it both hazardous waste and excluded recyclable material? I really don't think so. I'm happy, usually happy if there's a label on it. Either one is a good start. All right, so we didn't give you a break. We're going to power through. We're not going to get to all this down here. This is what I showed you, a brief 5 minutes when you came in this morning if you were early. But real quick, there is a good closed container policy that Nick's going to go through in the next 5 to 10 minutes. We're not going to cover the incompatibility tool. There is a link within the PowerPoint. You can click on that. You'll be able to enter chemicals that you might be going into. Say you're accumulating, consolidating, commingling in a single tank. You can put different chemicals and see what the possible hazards are for mixing those chemicals together. It's a good tool. We just run out of time. And so after Nick talks about the closed container policy, Terry, real briefly, I'll just show you in 5 minutes what the tag's been up to and what we're working on.
Hopefully we'll get out to lunch a little early. No promises. So I think you can feel a little better if your mind is hurting and if you're confused. You can feel a little better that the fact that we need closed container guidance just speaks to a whole volume. What's a closed container? I'm going to be going back and forth between the actual document and our PowerPoint here, so bear with me. But in 2009, there was a memo, an EPA memo for closed containers. Who has seen that document? See a couple hands? Okay, I'm going to take the time to go through the whole document just so you have some eyes on it and show you how to get there too, because it's important. It doesn't replace any of the existing laws or regulations, but it is just a guidance document. There's been numerous closed container issues. I know Riverside County's has been among those issues. We actually had a certain company from a certain industry challenge us on a violation, and it gave us pause. It was like, well, and we ultimately we looked at this guidance, got a county council opinion on it to help us proceed. But this guidance was, and what it refers to, the EPA guidance document, is much of what our county council pulled from to make their opinion. So 1980 preamble, it has some of this language that containers should be closed to minimize emissions of volatile waste, to help protect ignitable or reactive waste, to help prevent spills, to reduce the potential for mixing incompatibles, a lot of language. And then down on the bottom, it also just states that, you know what, it's good management practice. It's just good management practice to have your containers closed. You avoid a lot of other violations by doing it, just a good BMP, so to speak. The document is located here. You probably can't write that fast to write that whole link, but Leon here can scroll through the actual document. This is it right here. The handout is going to say RCRA Online 14.8.10. It's actually 14.8.26, but you can search for it with RCRA Online, the tool that we showed you earlier, just by simply typing in closed container, and it comes up. And this is kind of what it looks like. If you just scroll down it, I think, yeah. And it's compiling a 2009 memo that had some information in it, and then there's some questions that memo brought up, and then it addresses those questions in another supplemental section. And it's actually one of the only memos that I've seen that has pictures. One of the only guidance documents that has pictures. Are you guys aware of any others that have pictures like that? Yeah, so it's helpful. It's like, what are they talking about? Oh, that's what they're talking about. So you can see right here one of the pictures, satellite accumulation. They really, it's pretty broad, and they address a lot of different things. which you wouldn't think would be necessary, but it is. Funnels, funnel attachments, flip-top lids, preventing spills, all sorts of things. Different types of lids and drum scenarios. Tanks. So go there, get the document, print it off, and have it. It's important. It's worth the reading and review, and hopefully just use your best judgment in exercising what it alludes to.
It's uploaded with this presentation. If you click on it,
Oh, great. Cool.
presentations, there's 3 links. One of them is that.
So it provides info and examples. Again, it's really good. It talks about containers continuously receiving liquid waste. It needs to be closed to minimize possible release, all that. When it's receiving waste, it doesn't need to be closed. This is an example of containers that are constantly receiving. And the idea is, you know what? Though it's receiving it, it should be managed in a way that if it tipped over, it shouldn't spill, not readily. And that's where you have a tube and kind of an inserted lid with a small opening. And then you have the secondary containment trays, which are a good idea. That's recommended. And when the device is not in operation, obviously the container should be closed. So it comes back to, is it receiving waste or not? Why close containers? Already briefly mentioned that. Best management practice. This talks about some of the history and then the language of this just kind of historical process of this guidance coming up. And it talks about what I already mentioned. After publishing the memo in 2009, the guidance, there's those questions in November of 2011, and they address those questions that are located as part of the document. So container compliance, let's see. So where it's a batch process, this kind of talks to that. These are the questions that came up from the original memo. A container of hazardous waste must be kept closed during the times that the process is not depositing the hazardous waste. But when it is, again, if it's adding to a container, you're fine. Whether indoors or outdoors, containers must remain closed. That was a question that came up. The method of closure may need to be more protective if outside. That's kind of common sense. And just a best management practice too. And lastly, the agency looked at strapping containers together, which is apparently an industry practice. I have not seen that. I don't know if you guys have, but TSDFs. And they just said that is okay to do, but you have to make sure that it doesn't put you in noncompliance for other issues such as weekly inspections, labeling, things like that. And, oh good, okay, so that's the correct number. And it alludes to the fact that it was an old number, which was cited in this slide previously, and now it is this new number. So they changed the RCRA online number. But again, to search closed containers. All right. Did you want me to cover this?
Very quickly. No. If you have an unknown race, refer here.
Yeah, there's some talking. Thank you, everyone. If you have some questions, we can hang out for a little bit, but we want lunch too. No, but really, if you have questions, and thanks very much.